Hashtag the industry that profits from lost luggage. Every year, approximately 26 million bags vanish inside the world's airports. They slip off conveyor belts, get misrouted across continents, or simply dissolve into a system so massive that no one can fully account for them. Most travelers assume their missing bag is just delayed. But a significant number of those bags are never coming back. And here is where the story gets strange. Somewhere in the American South, there is an ordinary-looking retail store quietly selling the personal belongings of complete strangers. Laptops, wedding dresses, prescription medications. Items that once sat inside someone's closet are now sitting on shelves with price tags. That store is not a thrift shop. It is not a charity outlet. It is something far more deliberate. And it is only one small piece of a hidden industry worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually. So how does something this unusual become normal? To understand that, you first have to understand what actually happens inside an airport every single day. A major international hub like Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson processes over 270,000 passengers daily. Each of those passengers likely checks at least one bag. That means hundreds of thousands of pieces of luggage moving simultaneously through underground conveyor systems, loading docks, transfer points, and cargo holds, all within the span of a few hours. The margin for error sounds small, but the volume is so enormous that even a fraction of a percent produces thousands of mishandled bags every single day. Airlines invest billions into tracking technology, barcodes, RFID chips, digital manifests that follow a bag from check-in to carousel. On paper, the system should be close to perfect. But luggage does not always follow paper. Tags tear off in the chaos of a busy transfer. Automated scanners misread labels that are wet, folded, or printed incorrectly. Bags get loaded onto the wrong aircraft entirely. And when a bag loses its identity inside that system, it begins a journey its owner never anticipated. Airlines typically hold unclaimed bags for 30 to 90 days, searching records, sending notifications, opening bags for identification. Most bags are recovered, but some are not. And once that window closes, the bag does not simply get thrown away. It enters a quiet, largely invisible system that most travelers have never considered. Somewhere inside that system is a clue, something peculiar, that reveals just how organized and profitable this process has become. That clue is the store. But to understand why it exists, you must first follow the bag. What does it actually take for a bag to become permanently lost? The tracking systems airlines use are genuinely sophisticated. Delta Airlines introduced RFID tracking across its network and reported a dramatic reduction in mishandled baggage. Other major carriers followed with similar investments. The technology clearly works. So why do millions of bags still go missing every year? The answer lies in the gaps between systems. Airlines do not always share tracking data with each other in real time. When a passenger flies on two separate carriers during a single journey, what is called an interline connection, the bag must transfer between two networks that often do not communicate effectively. In those handoff moments, bags fall through the cracks. Not literally, but bureaucratically. Responsibility becomes unclear. Response time slows. And the bag quietly sits somewhere, unclaimed, waiting for a decision that may never come. Airport storage facilities hold thousands of these orphan bags at any given moment. Behind the public counters of lost and found departments, away from travelers' eyes, there are enormous backrooms stacked floor to ceiling with luggage. Some industry workers describe it as walking into a warehouse. Rows and rows of bags lined up with intake dates attached, like inventory waiting to be processed. Which, as it turns out, is precisely what they are. Here is the number that is hardest to absorb. In a single recent year, U.S. airlines reported over 2 million mishandled baggage incidents. Global figures push far beyond that. The majority are eventually resolved, but a stubborn percentage never makes it home. Applied to the full scale of global air travel, that represents hundreds of thousands of unclaimed bags every single year. Bags filled with clothing, electronics, jewelry, cameras, medication, and deeply personal items. Those things do not disappear. They accumulate. And in that accumulation sits extraordinary value. Value that someone, very deliberately, decided to capture? Who made that decision? And how did it become an entire industry? When an airline officially declares a bag unclaimed, it faces an immediate practical problem. It cannot store that bag indefinitely. Airport storage space is expensive. The contents still technically belong to the original passenger, but the passenger cannot be found. Airlines resolve this legal and logistical tension through a process that most passengers never think to ask about. The standard practice involves selling unclaimed baggage in bulk to third-party companies that specialize in exactly this transaction. These buyers purchase entire lots of unclaimed luggage, sometimes hundreds of bags at once, for a fraction of their estimated value. They accept the bags completely unsorted, contents unknown. It is, in the most literal sense, a blind market. The most well-known player in this space is a company called Unclaimed Baggage, based in Scottsboro, Alabama. Founded in 1970 by Doyle Owens, it began as a single van and a handshake deal with a Washington, D.C. bus company. Today it operates a retail store spanning 50,000 square feet, larger than a full city block, and processes millions of items every year. The company purchases unclaimed baggage directly from airlines, then sorts every single item by hand. Usable clothing is cleaned and tagged. Electronics are tested and priced. Jewelry is authenticated. Items that cannot be sold are donated or recycled. Nothing is simply discarded. The sorting process alone employs hundreds of workers, and the retail floor moves inventory at a remarkable pace. Shoppers drive from multiple states specifically to visit this store, drawn by the promise of finding something unexpected at an unusually low price. A designer handbag, a vintage camera, a nearly new laptop. The appeal is undeniable. Every item on those shelves once belonged to someone who has no idea where it ended up. And the store has built an entire business model around that mystery. But Unclaimed Baggage is not the only company in this space. Auction platforms, online resellers, and liquidation specialists all participate in similar markets, purchasing unclaimed goods from transportation networks, storage facilities, and government agencies. The infrastructure supporting this trade is far more developed than most people realize. And the numbers confirm it. Consider the full scale of what is being described here. According to the SETA Baggage IT Insights report, the global air transport industry mishandled approximately 4.35 bags per 1,000 passengers in a recent measured year. That translates to roughly 26 million mishandled bags worldwide annually. Even if the vast majority are eventually returned, the residual percentage left unclaimed represents an enormous volume of goods. Industry estimates suggest the total retail value of items inside unclaimed luggage runs into hundreds of millions of dollars every single year. To put that in perspective, consider that the average checked bag contains personal items valued at approximately $1,500. Apply that figure across even a fraction of unrecovered bags, and the numbers become staggering. This is not a minor footnote in the airline industry. It is a parallel economy operating quietly alongside it. And it extends far beyond airports. Unclaimed packages from shipping carriers, abandoned storage units, and government seizures all feed into related industries that function on the same core principle. That lost property eventually becomes available property, and available property has value. The lost luggage segment of this market is particularly interesting because of how systematically it operates. Airlines have formal agreements with buyers. Prices are negotiated in advance. Pickup schedules are coordinated. This is not opportunistic scavenging. This is a structured supply chain. And like any supply chain, it has grown more efficient over time. Online marketplaces now allow buyers to bid on lots of unclaimed baggage without ever visiting a physical location. Photographs of sealed bags are posted. Bidding begins. Winners receive shipments containing items they have never seen. It has become a form of legal treasure hunting, scaled to industrial proportions. The question that remains, however, is this: does any of this money ever find its way back to the original owners? And the answer to that question brings us back to the store in Alabama. Back to the clue introduced at the very beginning of this story. Why does a retail store in Scottsboro, Alabama matter so much to this story? On the surface, it looks like an unusually large second-hand shop. Tourists visit. Bargain hunters browse. Local residents drop by on weekends. Nothing about the exterior suggests anything remarkable. But look closer at what is actually happening inside that building. And something does not quite add up. The items on those shelves are not random cast-offs. They are not donations from people clearing out their closets. They are the possessions of real, identifiable travelers. People who checked a bag at an airport, boarded a flight, and arrived at their destination to find nothing waiting at the carousel. Their belongings made a journey those travelers never consented to. From airport storage to airline records to a bulk sale to a sorting room to a price tag on a retail shelf. At no point in that journey was the original owner informed that their property was being commercially redistributed. At no point did they receive a share of the proceeds. This detail is what makes the lost luggage industry genuinely extraordinary. It is not illegal. Airlines disclose in their terms and conditions that unclaimed property may be disposed of after a set period. Passengers agree to these terms when they purchase a ticket. But how many passengers actually read those terms? How many people checking a bag at the airport understand that, under specific circumstances, their personal belongings could end up for sale in a store they have never heard of, in a state they may have never visited? That gap between legal disclosure and public awareness is where this industry quietly thrives. And understanding that gap is the key to understanding everything. Here is the full picture. Airlines sell unclaimed bags to buyers like Unclaimed Baggage. Those buyers sort the contents, price the items, and sell them to the public. The airline recovers storage costs and earns revenue on property it can no longer return. The buyer earns profit on the retail markup. The store in Scottsboro earns revenue on every sale. And somewhere at the far end of this chain, a traveler is still waiting for a reimbursement claim to be processed, typically receiving a fraction of what their belongings were actually worth. The system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as designed. Lost luggage does not represent a failure in the airline industry. For certain companies, it represents an opportunity. The infrastructure exists. The legal framework supports it. The consumer demand is real. People genuinely enjoy browsing a store where every item carries an unknown history. The mystery of the original owner becomes part of the product's appeal. That wedding dress on the rack. That laptop in the glass case. That camera with someone else's photograph still on the memory card. These are not just products. They are stories. And the industry has learned to monetize stories at scale. The entire system, from mishandled bag to retail shelf, can move within 90 days. That is the pipeline. That is where the money flows. So the next time you stand at a baggage carousel, watching the same bags circle endlessly, waiting for yours to appear, consider what you now know. Your bag is not just luggage. Inside that airline system, it carries a financial value that extends far beyond your personal attachment to it. If it disappears, a process begins. A quiet, efficient, surprisingly profitable process that most travelers never witness and almost no one questions. An entire industry has been built on the assumption that some bags will always go missing. And industries built on reliable assumptions tend to last. The real question is not where your lost luggage goes. The real question is whether the system was ever designed to bring it back in the first place.